Hello and welcome. You're viewing the Citizens Journalist podcast, Mesa County Compass, that brings you the news that you can use from a different point of view. I'm Ruth.
I'm Lisa.
And together we are Mesa County Compass. Our goal is to create an informed, current, active citizenry armed with the facts. We will be covering what's new to you, what it means to you, what you can do about it, and provide you access to the decision makers when we can. Good morning. We're here at Mountain Roasters Coffee with Cody this morning and asking a bunch of questions about what's going on with 4th and 5th Street and other matters. Welcome, Cody.
Well, thank you.
And I would, just for our guests, I want to say that Cody's kind of been under the gun for the past month.
Yeah,
and
rightfully so.
And part of it is that he still wants to be communicating, wants to change the way that we communicate in the community so people felt heard. And I know that there are a lot of people that were really disappointed with your decision of not totally reversing 4th and 5th Street, and they feel like that was just not listening to a majority that were making a point, and it felt like those that came at the last minute won because they were the loudest and the squeakiest wheel, and that wasn't what you intended. So can you explain what the intent was, and so it doesn't kind of sound like an excuse, but your real reasons and what your long-term goal is for us.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I know that's certainly been the perception. Like, it was immediate that I got emails that called me a traitor and a liar right out of the gate, right? And I'm going to be putting out a blog post. I've been working on this. Actually, I had it ready probably weeks ago, but I've revised it several times because it's hard for me to really express kind of the bigger picture and kind of all of the other moving parts around it. But one of the important things to me was not just the appearance of, but the actual, for us actually to be able to listen to people, not just to the 9,000 people-ish that voted for me in the election, but to vote for everybody, right? I'm very committed to our representative form of government, and I really want to make sure that people feel not just listened to, but heard, right? And that's what I'm doing. And this isn't about, well, who talked to us most recently, and that's what we're going to do. But to say, and I get it was a quick turnaround. I spent a lot of time talking to downtown businesses and property owners to really establish what worked for them and what didn't. I think that to have that kind of buy-in, I probably should have spent more time talking to, especially my main supporters, the people that really did a lot of work to help us through the election. To really kind of make sure that I had an open line of communication there. So, but the bigger picture here now is not just about looking at 4th and 5th as that being the issue. That's a symptom, right? So that is just, it's like what we're talking about, all these things about 4th and 5th, it's like taking, an aspirin for a cancer diagnosis, right? Are we just masking some symptoms? Are we actually drilling down to the bigger issues? So having some good conversations about policy and why we're at where we're at is more important, because we're not just talking about 4th and 5th. We're talking about our entire community. And we're not just talking about this year, next year, these next 4 years. We're talking about decades ahead and where our city is going. So that's that broader conversation. So I am still that person that listens to people. I'm who people thought I was when they voted for me. And I'm still out there listening to people. So I encourage, if you're listening to this, to reach out to me.
Right.
And don't assume the worst, right? I think I can see and I can understand why some people feel that way. Justified, right? But I really want to make sure that I'm doing a good job, maybe a better job, of communicating the whys behind things. So shouldn't have waited so long on that blog post about this 4th and 5th, and probably should have brought in a few more voices to help to make sure that people understood kind of the motivation, why for me it made sense to bifurcate the process, to separate north of Grand and south of Grand. And I think there's still some changes that are that may come and may be in the works regarding how much money we may or may not spend on this process. So as long as we're honest about what we're doing, are we really doing this for safety, or are we doing this for multimodal plan? Like and how does complete streets play into all this? Like that's that.
And I think people do not know what a complete street is, and until a couple of days ago, and started looking into the policies and looking into some other things. What is a complete street, and where did that vision come from?
So that complete street is within different policies that we have within the city of Grand Junction, right? So complete streets are streets that are designed not just to move traffic, not just to move cars as we commonly think about it, but more complete modes of transportation, meaning they're taking into consideration pedestrian and bike, and I think they even mentioned wheelchairs, right? It's like all these different modes of transportation, and the push is, or the policy is designed to make that the consideration in any road redesign or any new roads that are built. And that's something that we need to be facing with eyes wide open, like what does that mean? And in this case, it means a very failed plan for an unsafe plan for 4th and 5th, right? That came right out of the gate. And it's fair to say that staff had reason to design it that way because there was policy enacted by council that supported that.
And where did that plan come from originally?
Right. Where did the idea of the complete streets come from?
So I think it's fair to say there's several places that came from, right? I'm not going to get into the speculation of who brought it in and why it all happened. But there are consultants that get involved in the process, and there is community outreach, but we need to make sure that we're approaching it balanced, right? That we're getting a really good read on what our community wants and needs, and that really gets into that engagement process, right? That's important. So those are all things that we're trying to tackle, and we're looking at this as a bigger picture, right? So, and that's what we've talked about somewhat this morning, is to say how can we be more deliberate in our process to make sure that we aren't listening to just one small group, right, on one side of the issue or the other. Like, this isn't me trying to sort out or demonize either part of this, right, but to say, let's make plans that are realistic, long-term for our community, and that we're honest about our intentions.
And that's going to be really difficult. One of the things that we see is that there's a vision for the community according to the comprehensive plan, the 2020 comprehensive plan, but how do we know that it's the vision of the community and not the vision of the people that were selected for that committee? And I'm going to say back on the sustainability and adaptation plan, and this is not you, so we'll move it away from you, but when we interviewed Jason the other day, he said, on the sustainability and adaptation plan, the people that were on the committee, I felt it was well representative. And I said, well, Jason, people on the committee that were more conservative didn't feel like that was representative of the community, and it hits that. And
I will tell you, the people that when they have the sustainability plan, like when I saw the initial list, I protested. Like I reached out to our city manager, city attorney immediately and said, this is not okay. How can we have a policy that talks about energy and sustainability within our community and have no representation from oil and gas, right? That's where we actually got a few voices that weren't just all green energy and bikes, because that's what it was initially. So to me, it's about making sure that everybody gets heard, not just the ones that we want specific answers from.
Right, and we have the overall acceptance of the vision. So Bob Tenney's sitting here, and I'm going to ask Bob, when you came to this meeting today, what were you wanting to learn, and what did you learn, and what do you think that how people can be involved?
I guess I've been coming to coffee with Cody. I've been coming to coffee with Cody for months now, just when I wanted to find out who messed up our streets, and so that's just kind of what I've been coming and looking for what they're going to do downtown. It seems to be up in the air as far as some things, and what they want to do with the parking down there, situation down there, which no one uses the Rock Slide parking lot anymore because that's all messed up now. So it's just, I just look for information like on that when I come to all these. And so that's kind of just where I am right now.
And do you feel heard when you come to this
I do,
meeting?
I do. I always do. Cody always has some good information and some good insights, and that's pretty good as far as I'm concerned.
And were you one that voted for the councilman based on the turnaround of the streets, or was it more comprehensive than that for you?
It was mostly that. Yes. It was. There were some other things going on too, but it was mostly the pilot project that caused me to vote for the councilman.
And did you feel like what Cody has discussed with you made you feel more confident in his leadership?
It does. It definitely does. We have much better leadership at the top now than we had before. And it's more in line with what my ideals are than what the previous mayor had.
And council. So Tom, what do you have to add?
I think what's important to remember first is, candidate Ballard, candidate Van Dyke, and candidate Cody, they made clear their positions on the 4th and 5th Street issue, but no promises were really made. No candidate is, that stupid to make a promise and then not be able to deliver in whole. I was surprised the first session of the new council meeting to see the vote actually happen right then and there. I think perhaps there might have been a rush to judgment. I think it was probably dropped in their lap and a decision needed to be made, although I think now, hindsight being 2020, we're finding that taking a step back may very well have been the right decision there, and giving the residents north of Grand more time to speak. And then, of course, we've all seen what happened with the fallout of another particular council member when businesses felt literally threatened. There are things we just need to remember that really took place. That's all.
Yeah.
Another thing that is disturbing to me is that, and I'm going to pick on Jason again, that Jason is on so many different committees that seem to be pushing a certain agenda, which would be the complete streets. He's on the Regional Transportation Committee. He's the representative for Grand Junction, and he's on the Urban Trails Committee. And what bothers me is based on his, let's get our bike alliance together to go against those. Maybe he should be removed from those committees instead of.
I hear you, but I will say this, is that we have areas of interest, right? So for me, it's public
Airport.
safety, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, I'm on the airport, but that happened because I knew it was important to Grand Junction, and I had a lot to learn when I got on over a year ago. There's great leadership there. I've learned a lot about our airport, but very different is my relationship with public safety, right? I know these, police officers and firefighters, a lot of them by name, right? I've done the job. I've been out there, and I have a lot of interest in that. And I am what some might say is biased, right? That I have this bias towards public safety, and I think we should be doing more to increase funding so that we can be better staffed, right? So that could be that same argument, right? The fact that a member of council has a lot of interest in a particular area, I don't think necessarily disqualifies them from serving in those areas. I see what you're saying as far as, they're pushing an agenda, but the same might be said for me when somebody that doesn't think we need as much money going to public safety, and they're like, well, Cody's always pushing to spend more money on public safety, if that makes sense.
That's fair. What are other things that you want to see happen in the future as far as public engagement and drawing the public in so that they, one, feel represented, but two, they are engaged, so they're making a difference in the community, for the community.
So it's really lowering those barriers, right? As we talked about earlier, when you have an opportunity to speak to council, but it's from behind a podium for 3 minutes and you don't get any feedback. Even if you ask questions, they aren't answered, right? So having opportunities like today, I think we had 10 of us sitting around this little table here for coffee with Cody, and and it's back and forth conversation, right? And this isn't me pretending I have all the answers, right? This is me listening and learning and sharing the information that I do have with people. So if we can do that more as a council in a structured way that honors the open meetings laws, right? To where we're noticing these meetings, that we have, even if it's just an open forum, that's agendized and it's out there, and the meetings are recorded, and so people can look at them later. That's important, but it takes down those barriers to entry. And there could be other things that we do. You know, we could do online. We could do an online public forum, right? We could do some other like town hall style meetings. Laurel Cole and I have talked about that quite a bit, and I think that's a great idea, right? How do we better engage public so that we can really kind of, sometimes it just lowers the temperature, because there's a lot of assumptions made about me, about 4th and 5th, that people don't get, like the bigger picture. And as I explained to you guys this morning a lot about that, there's a lot more at play. So I think it's hard for me to communicate that when people are just looking at one, little bit, or looking at a newspaper article, or an editorial that might lead them to think a certain thing, when it's like, there's a lot more dimensions to that that I'm glad to share, but it's hard to do that without sitting down with somebody and getting face to face.
I agree with that.
Just really sorry about that, Lisa. I am trying to get all this done in a short period of time. But then you were talking about kind of the open meetings or a Zoom meeting or whatever with everybody. We just need to let people know that you are available, that you will be available, and that we're going to try to get all of the rest of the council available to be able to get in on these discussions, because there's a lot we have to discuss besides 4th and 5th Streets.
Right.
There is the homeless situation, which is huge. There is the housing situation, which is huge. And the 4th and 5th Streets are only a very, very small part of this project that's coming up for the next 4 years while you're in office and beyond. So we just need to be sure that everyone is heard. And if we have those town halls, if we have the Zoom meetings with everybody and keep up with those open meeting laws, keep open with that, it looks to me like it would be a fantastic way to go besides the coffee with Kennedy on Tuesday and Thursdays.
Well, and also more outreach in terms of not just a press release. A press release is something that's already done.
Right.
But you've got one source, basically, the Daily Sentinel, that's giving the feed of what's going on. And I don't know how you reach. There's a lot of, I think, great publications like Rocky Mountain Voice. They do a great job. Business Times has been doing a great job of more depth and looking at people. So I don't know how you reach out to different organizations. What Tom is doing, saying this is coming up, let's look at it and talk about it. Here's some places where you can get information.
Well, and it's tough for people to be at things, right? People work for a living, they have family, they have commitments. A lot of times things don't work for them. Maybe a Wednesday night meeting doesn't work for them. And where else can we connect with our council, and how can we engage with them and ask questions, right? To where they're not just reading something in the newspaper, they're actually saying, hey, I have a thought about this. Could you help me understand the why on this? And that's really where I want to go with council. And that it's been talked about some, but that's been that push to have, how do we change our meeting formats, and making sure that we have a meeting policy to make sure people have an opportunity to be heard, and then also to have other opportunities to engage with council. And I think that was warmly received by most of council, as far as this is the way we should be working as representatives of our community.
Right. Anything that any of you guys want to add? Or Tom, you are never quiet. I can't believe this, but we also are
We've been
keeping
talking for like an hour and a half already.
He's already been here.
He's done, huh?
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you doing this always. And so you've been watching Mesa County Compass. This is the facts as we know them, the truth as we see it. You decide. Thanks, Cody.
Thank you, Cody.